5. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Liz Carmouche versus Catalina Kukagin. And this just seems like the one fight that doesn't belong on this whole card. I think Liz is probably going to win unless Liz is like completely way past her prime, which I don't think she is. I think she'll be able to hit takedowns on this chick and just beat her up with ground and pound. This is just a weird fight that doesn't belong on this badass card. Next is Jim Miller versus Thiago Alves, and the biggest thing with me in this fight is that Thiago Alves, this is his first time at lightweight ever, so I don't know how well he's going to look with the weight cut, and that it's a huge variable. It's not just a couple pounds, it's like 15. And even though he was a small 70er, he was very thick, he's thickly muscled and stuff like that, so I don't know how he's going to look conditioning-wise moving down to a weight class that's this completely different. But either way, I'm going to pick Jim Miller. I just think that Jim Miller's looked better recently, even though I think he got his ass beat by Joe Lozon. I just think that, he's used to fighting at this weight, and Thiago Alves is a big dude, cutting a lot of weight for the first time ever. So I'm going to go with Jim Miller. I say he wins by submission. Next is Vincent Luque versus Belal Muhammad, and this is another weird fight on a big card, but Vincent Luque's just really impressed me recently. I think his striking and jiu-jitsu game have been looking amazing since he entered the UFC. I think Belal Muhammad has some really good wrestling that could give Luque some problems. I think that's his biggest problem, is that he has a hard time beating really strong wrestlers. But I'm just going to go with Luque. I think he'll be able to force this into a brawl, which is something Muhammad's gotten into. And I still feel like that UFC debut showed a lot of hole in Bella's game, is that he gets in the brawls he gets dropped pretty easily. I mean, he recovered, but that could have just been that one-time thing. It really makes me question his chin when you get dropped that much in one fight. So I'm going to go with Vincent. I just feel like he's been looking better overall than Bella has. Next is Rafael Natal versus Tim Boetsch. And Tim Boetsch won that fight recently against Josh Saman, but Josh Saman's never had great takedown defense, and Tim Boetsch was able to continuously hit takedowns and beat him up on the top. I don't think he'll be able to do that with Natal. Natal has been looking amazing recently. I feel like aside from that one loss to Robert Whittaker, I think he was on like a 3 or 4 fight win streak before that, and he looked good in all those fights. So I just feel like Natal has the better striking overall. Tim Boetsch has probably more power, but I think as long as Natal keeps it technical and doesn't make any mistakes, he should be able to stuff takedowns and beat Tim Boetsch up and eventually win by TKO or submission. And I think he has better conditioning, but that's just another thing. Next is Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Michael Johnson, and Michael Johnson won his last fight. He definitely has really good speed and solid takedown defense. But the thing is, once you actually get him to the ground, he's just okay. I don't think his bottom game is very good, and I don't think his submission defense is very good. I've never seen a fight that Khabib couldn't take the other guy to the ground, and I think as long as he doesn't get caught with a big shot early, he'll be able to tie Michael up against the fence and eventually work him to the ground. And once he does work him to the ground, I don't think Michael's going to get back up. And this is how I see this fight. I think Khabib is eventually going to work Michael against the fence, eventually hit a takedown, and once he does, he's probably going to win by rear naked choke or something, and I say he does it in the first round. Next is Frankie Edgar versus Jeremy Stephens, and I really like Jeremy Stephens. I would love it if he would win this fight, but if you look at Jeremy Stephens' entire career, these are the fights that he always loses, especially if you look at his light fights at featherweight. I think he's only got 2 losses, and they were both at Cub Swanson and Max Holloway. So it's just guys that were better technical strikers than him overall, and he just has a hard time catching guys that are good at using good footwork, and that's what Frankie Edgar is. Frankie Edgar's got really great footwork, and he's not just going to stand there and let Jeremy Stephens tee off on him. And I just feel like Frankie's going to move around, hit takedowns here and there, just outpoint him for 3 rounds and win by decision. Next is Miesha Tate versus Raquel Pennington, and these two chicks have very similar styles, but just Miesha Tate's just better in my opinion at everything. It's not a huge advantage. I just think she's like 1 level higher at everything, and that's all it is. It's just a chick who's just a little bit better at everything versus a chick who's just kind of okay. So I think Miesha Tate's going to win by submission, maybe late 3rd. Next is Kelvin Gastelum versus Don Cerrone. Kelvin Gastelum's alright. I just feel like he's not amazing. His striking's pretty good and his wrestling's pretty good, but I just feel like Cerrone's on another level altogether. Cerrone's only going to lose to like the really badass people, and even then, he doesn't always. It's pretty close, and I just think Cerrone's just way better. I think his striking's a lot better, and I think his grappling overall is better. Even his wrestling, I mean, he might not be as good of a wrestler in general, but I think his takedown defense and the way that he hits takedowns, the way he kind of times them like GSP, is probably better overall than Kelvin. And I just think he's a better fighter overall, so I think he's probably going by TKO, maybe submission with like a rear naked choke or something. Next is Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero, and the biggest thing for me is Yoel hasn't fought in like a year or two, and he was already pretty old, and we saw he gasses pretty easily. I don't think time off for him is ever good, especially since he got caught for like using steroids or something like that. I think Chris Weidman in his last fight, he just made a mistake. He threw a wheel kick when he shouldn't have, and then Rockhold just capitalized on it, and I thought the fight was super close up until that point. I think Weidman's still pretty early in his career, still in his prime, and I think, not to say Yoel isn't a good fighter and all, it's just he's getting older and, you know, taking time off like how he did. I know he didn't voluntarily do it, but I just have a hard time seeing him winning this fight, and I think as long as Weidman gets out of the first round, he'll probably win by TKO late second. Next is Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I think that's how you say her name. And Karolina's a good striker, but I don't feel like she's got the same striking experience and striking level as Joanna does. I think Joanna's just fought better people and fought in bigger stages. And it's going to be two strikers, but one striker is just way better. And this is going to kind of be like Joanna's last fight against like that Canadian kickboxer chick. I can't remember her name, but I feel like Joanna's just going to be doing more and just more accurate and just a better striker overall, and she'll probably win by decision. Next is Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Thompson, and I said it going into the fight with Robbie Lawler that Tyron Woodley's got that type of style where, I mean, he could beat anybody in the first round, and that's what he did. He beat Robbie Lawler in the first round. That doesn't make me feel like he's impressive. I mean, he's always been that type of fighter, and, you know, him beating the champion at the time with that style is, you know, not that impressive. What would be impressive is if he would win by like 4th or 5th round knockout. But that's always been the biggest knock on him, is that he slows down considerably as the fight goes on, and I feel like he's fighting a guy who's a way better striker than him. I think we've already seen this fight when he fought Rory MacDonald. Rory MacDonald has really long limbs and was able to keep Tyron on the outside the whole fight. And Tyron just got slower, and he couldn't close that distance. And he was just forcing shit, and nothing was happening. And I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think he's going to be able to do what he did to Robbie Lawler, to Stephen Thompson. I think Stephen Thompson will keep the distance and just pick him apart and either win a 50-45 decision, or he'll get a late knockout. Next is Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. And this is the same thing with Tyron Woodley. I mean, Conor McGregor always says he's going to knock the guy out in the first or second round, and that's because I think the Nate Diaz fight showed why he always says that. It's because he can't knock guys out after the second round. He gets considerably slower, and his style requires a lot of speed in terms of he waits for guys to come in and throw, and then he'll throw right after them. And it does. You have to be really fast to do shit like that, and it takes a lot of energy. And he can only do it for about a round or two, and I think we've already seen this fight in general with Chad Mendes. I think Chad Mendes was beating Conor McGregor. He just made the mistake of going from full guard to half guard, which let McGregor get back up. If you watch that fight, when Chad took Conor down and was just in his guard, Conor couldn't get back up. The only reason Conor got back up is because Chad willingly went to half guard, and then that let Conor get the half guard stand up. When Chad was in Conor's guard, Conor didn't know how to get back up. He was in Conor's full guard the whole round, just beating on him. And to me, I feel like there's no way Eddie didn't look at that tape. You know, he saw that fight, and that would be my game plan if I was Eddie. It's just take him down, sit in his full guard, and beat him up. He can't get up. He's already shown. And, I mean, he might have gotten better. I'm not saying he hasn't, but to me, Eddie's just a better striker than Chad was. And he might not have been a good wrestler, but he's bigger. You know what I mean? Chad's a really small guy. He's just thickly muscled. So, I mean, I would say overall, if you compare them size-wise, their wrestling's probably about the same. So, I just feel like Eddie's going to hit takedowns over and over again and eventually win by, like, rear naked choke. Late third, maybe early fourth. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.